So welcome to episode 7 in this ongoing series where, if you've been watching it, you are building a mobile application in Flow. In this particular episode, we're going to kind of display the bottom bar for us in order to create our goal. We're going to kind of create queries to display our goals, and of course we're going to display the goals within inside the user interface. And we're also going to solve a database problem as well. So lots to pack into this particular episode. Let's get into the video and let's get cracking. Okay then, so by way of introduction, in this particular episode, we're going to do two things. We're going to make a change to our application to display the bottom bar, just as we're doing here, so we can then obviously create our goals. We obviously added that functionality in the previous episode. Of course, when you hit create, we're then going to want to then show the goals within inside the main page of inside our application. So that's what we're going to cover in this particular episode. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to want to do is add an action to our plus button down here. So just with the floating action button selected, move up here to the right hand side here, open up the action flow editor, hit add action. And then what I'm just going to do here is I'm just going to do a search for a bottom sheet like that. We're going to display this. So we're going to hit the show option. Now this is going to then present ourselves with a number of different options on the right hand side. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just select first the component. This is the one that we created previously. So just select component here, and then of course we're going to select the create goal component like that. Now we are going to put a height in. Now if you have a look at the actual create goal component, the actual container we set to be 410 in height. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to match that here. I'm going to say 410 by just a general kind of guide. Now it could be that you would want to extend that maybe slightly, maybe it might be 420 or 430 if the kind of the contents of the actual bottom bar is kind of right at the bottom of your application. So you might want to kind of almost implement your own little safe area in some respect, because we switched off the safe area of the page. We kind of want to control that ourselves. So feel free to kind of adjust the height here. Let's set 410, and of course we can adjust that when we run it up to see how that looks within inside the iOS simulator. Now there's a couple of little options that we would like to look at down here, and these are these particular options here. So one of them is non-dismissible. Now we can kind of force our bottom bar to not be dismissed. So what this basically means is that there's a particular area, there's kind of like a scrim area within inside our application. Let me just demonstrate that to you here. So if I hit the plus here, there's a little scrim area here. Now what we can do is, if we don't want the user to kind of dismiss this bottom bar, we can toggle the non-dismissible off, which means that you won't be able to do this if I just hover my mouse over here and hit the left there, or else I grab my finger and press that inside our actual running device. You can see here that I can easily dismiss the bottom bar, but you might not want that to be the case. So of course, make sure if that is the case, you can have this as non-dismissible turned on. Now we're going to keep that turned off for our particular applications. Now we've got enable drag as well, so you can kind of drag up that bottom bar and you can swipe it right down to the bottom to dismiss it. That is another option. Now we're not going to do that with inside our application, and of course use a safe area as well. So of course we can make sure we respect the bottom safe area. This is kind of like the standard safe area that you'd have inside your application. I guess I'm controlling that safe area myself inside my application, so that's why I was talking earlier about adjusting kind of the height of this particular sort of a bottom bar if we want to increase that a little bit more. So I'm going to keep that one turned off. And of course, you've also got non-blocking as well. Now, what this basically means is that on this particular action here, if I was to apply a different action here, for example, I might want to do something once the bottom sheet has been dismissed, then by saying, by keeping this turned off, it means that we'll wait for this bottom sheet to kind of be dismissed by itself before the next set of actions are undertaken. But if of course I could say a non-blocking here, which means that any particular actions after this will play out as soon as the bottom sheet is displayed. So there's a couple of different options available to you there to consider maybe for your own particular application, depending on what you would like. But of course I'm going to turn this one off here because I just want to make sure that this kind of is presented. No further actions are played out until I actually dismiss that bottom sheet myself. So we're going to keep that as is. It's all pretty standard here. We've got sort of colors and barrier colors and stuff like that. If you want to add a little bit more customization in there, it's pretty self-explanatory of what these are. So that's all that we need to do. Just hit the close, and we would be golden now if we were to now fire up this application, which we will now do in the simulator. Let's have a look and see what it looks like. Okay, so we're now ready to run this particular application. So one thing that I've made sure that I'm doing is I've made sure I'm running the iOS simulator. Now, of course, this is the running version of the application, so we'll be replaced in a moment with the application that we're going to run. So I've made sure that is up and running. Now, if I just go back to Flutterflow itself, if I just move up to this option here, I'm going to choose Get Devices. That's going to go away. Have a look and see what I got. I could have a mobile phone plugged in at this point here, of course, and it will then find that as a device, of course, as long as you've kind of got that set up correctly. But you can see here that here is my simulator. I've got the available device as iPhone 15 Pro Max. That is a simulator. Hit the plus here, and now I'm ready to hit the test option here. Now that's going to take a moment. It's going to kind of export everything that it needs to, package everything up, and deploy it within inside the iOS simulator. So once that is done, we'll head over to then the simulator and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so it looks like we're good to go. Let's now head over to the simulator here and we can see that the running application is there. This is looking pretty good, just as we expect it to be. If I hit the little plus, do we get the bottom bar? We do get the bottom bar up here. That's great. Now, of course, I can type in maybe test goal 2 here. Let's just put some standard text in, hit create, and then quite successfully, although we're not going to see anything, I'm hoping that we have now 2 records added to our sort of SQLite database. So it looks like we're in a really, really good position with local run. Hopefully everything is up and running for you as well. This is the first time that we run this application within this particular series. So this sets us up now nicely for the rest of the series in terms of now then adding into this particular application. So let's now move on to the next bit where we're going to focus on that list view in the middle. Okay, so we're now ready to display our goals within inside our list view, but in order for us to be able to do that, we need to create a new SQLite query, which is going to be a read query, slightly different to what we created previously in the last episode where we created the update query. Now this is all it's going to simply do is it's going to provide us the ability within inside our list view to call out to that particular query. We're going to define the values that we're going to want to display within inside our list view, and we can do that within inside the query. This will then give the widgets on our screen here, such as the title, the description, something to hook onto that is provided from that particular query. So on the left hand side, let's move over to the cog here. We're back into the SQLite section. This is where we can now do a read query. So select read queries and then hit add query itself. Let's give our query a name. So this is going to be called a get goals, like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to very simply write a query in here just a moment. I'll walk you through that in just a second. But one really important part is to mention to you is this output columns. Now, we know in a typical database, for example, you might have, sort of 10, 20, 30 columns within inside your database table. In our instance, we've got like title and description and all of that stuff. Now, it could be that you might want to create a number of different types of read queries, which you can use throughout your application. And you can specify a number of different output columns just to keep things a little bit more optimized depending on what you are doing. Now in our application we haven't got many columns, so we're just going to write one particular query here with pretty well much most of the output columns that we could perhaps reuse within inside our application. So there's a couple of different ways that you can approach it. So let's first write our SQLite query and then we'll create the output columns. So firstly, I'm just going to write here, select star. So we're going to bring back everything here from our particular table. And of course, if I wanted to, I could do title, I could do description, but I'm just going to say, right, bring me back all of the columns from our database. And we're going to say from goals, which is our table name. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say where. In fact, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm not going to say where because we're going to come back and do that very, very shortly because this is where we can apply filtering. And I'll save that for the filtering bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say select star from goals, but I'm going to put an order on there. Okay, so I'm just going to type in order. Okay, and I'm going to say a by, and then it's going to be then the ID. So this is the ID column. So we know this is going to be incremental. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to set the order to be ascending. So we're going to start with our first one at the top, and then as we add a new goal, we're then going to see the second, third, fourth one that appear within inside our actual list view. Now, of course, if I wanted to, I could type in DESE for descending. So of course, the most newest one that we create will be at the top. But in this particular example, I'm just going to do an ascending like that. And I'm just going to finish that with a semicolon. So that's all that we need to do. So we're just going to bring back all of the rows from our table called goals, but we're going to order by the ID in ascending order. So once we've got that, we can now define the columns that we're going to want to hook onto within inside the widgets within inside Flutterflow. So let's now start creating these. Now I'm going to apply these as per my table. So I'm going to choose add column here. And the first one I'm going to want to bring back, of course, is the ID. Now that is going to be of type integer, and it's not going to be nullable. We're always going to get a value back for that. Let's hit add column. Next one, we are going to choose a title. I'm going to keep that as nullable here. Although the application does enforce that we actually put a title in our application, but I keep that nullable. And then of course we've got then description like that, which is also going to be nullable. Hit add column, just scroll down there. Now this is going to be a number of tasks. I'll just put like a little underscore there, number of tasks. Now of course that is going to be integer. It's going to be a number that we've got kind of max. I'm going to take the nullable there, hit add column. Just going to go down here and I'm going to put number of tasks. And then of course under it's completed like that. Again, this is going to be an integer and it's not going to be nullable. So choose add column here. Next one is going to be archived like that. That's going to be of type Boolean like that. Just going to take off the nullable there and add column, and this one is going to be status like that, and that's going to be a string, and that's going to bring that back. The last one we're going to want to do is of course is the created underscore at like that. Now that is going to be a type of integer there. Of course we're going to handle the dates and all that kind of stuff later, and of course I'll take off the nullable as well. Now that is all that we need to do. Now they should match up to our columns. Hopefully I've not made any mistakes there or missed something out. They should match all of the columns in my database, and that is what we're going to hook onto here. So all I need to do is hit the add query, and that query has now successfully been created. Now we can head back over to then the home page, and we can start now hooking up this particular query. Okay, so back on our homepage then, let's invoke that particular query. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the list view. This is kind of be like in some respect, the kind of like the parent of that we're going to apply the query to the widget itself. And then of course, what it means is then all the children that is underneath it are then going to be repeated, which is going to be exactly our goal container. So with our goals list view selected, we can move up here to then the backend query, this one just up here, choose add query. Now the query type here is just going to be then an SQLite query, select that. Now, of course, we've now got our get a goals query. So just choose that, hit confirm. Now we just need to hit confirm to this. Is just really just reminding us here that it's going to be, it's going to kind of generate the children dynamically for us. Hit confirm, and then instantly we're then presented with all of our containers. These are kind of ghosted here. These aren't really here, but it's kind of ghosted with inside the UI to make it look like that is a dynamic query. Now you can see straight away that we've got a few little issues here. We've got no spacing between our containers or anything like that, but we can come back and correct that. But pretty much that is as simple as it is in terms of invoking the query. Now we know that when our page loads, that query is going to be executed, and then hopefully we can then see all of the values then presented within inside our user interface. Now of course we now need to reference what those particular values are, and of course they're all going to come from the column itself. These are the kind of the output variables that we defined within inside our read query just a moment ago. So what we can do is we can just select the goal title text, for example. We can move over to the selector here to just select that. And now we've got this magical kind of new entry up here within here called get goals row. Just select that. And then here are all of the output variables that we defined previously. Now we just need the title here, so just select that. Now we're going to give this a default value. Of course, it's just going to be a space here. Now what we can do with inside the UI builder display, now you can see here it just says hello world. Well, we're just going to give this a kind of like a dummy title just to kind of represent exactly what the column is. I'm just going to choose a title here, hit confirm. Now you can see here that just says title, and I'm going to do the same for the description as well. So just select the selector, go to get goals row and choose the description, and then just down here put a space in here as it's a string, and then here we're just going to then put description here, and that's what would be displayed with inside our UI. So that is pretty well much as simple as it comes. Now let's quickly fire this up, see what that looks like with inside our simulator, just to make sure that we're kind of on the right track. Okay, so if we now cast our eyes up to the top right, we've got a couple of different options available to us. If you're doing kind of more sort of simple, sort of more cosmetic changes to your Flutterflow application, then a hot reload will keep it nice and quick and simple in terms of seeing the output with inside the simulator, or of course you've got a local device connected. We're going to restart our application, so just drop the little drop down here and we're going to hit the little restart there. Now away that's going to go, and then very quickly our application is going to kind of just quickly redeploy, and it's going to reload with inside inside our simulator. If I just head over there and have a look, you can see that the application is running. And to our surprise, we can see here that we've got a title and we've got description coming from our particular goal. Now, I think I made a reference earlier on about we should see 2 records here, but that's not actually the case. We're going to see 1 because this is the first time that we've actually sort of run our application in this particular series. So there's a few little cosmetic changes we need to make here. You can see that we've got something sort of scrolling in here. We need to kind of correct all of that within inside our application. But the good news is that we are now seeing goals within inside our list view. So let's now head over and start making some adjustments to some of these other widgets within inside the user interface. Okay, so back within the home page then, let's sort this one out here. Now, this is our task account text. So remember, we have the number of tasks and we have the number of completed tasks. But what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to kind of concatenate those strings together. That's going to come from our particular database. We want to put like a little divider in there as well. So we can do that really easily with inside of Flutterflow. We can just select that particular widget, move up to the text here, just select the little selector. And what we can do is we can use this option called combine text. So select that. Now this is going to allow us to add a different set of text values that will kind of concatenate together. So what we're going to do, the first one we're going to select from our database is the number of tasks. So just select that, go to the get goals row, and we're going to say a number of tasks, and then just hit confirm. And then here we're going to put then a space, a /, and then a space. And then here with our text, our next one, select that, and we're going to choose the number of tasks completed and just hit confirm. So we now know that that will be nicely presented within here. If I just hit confirm, you can see we kind of got the 1//2. I think that is going to play out quite nicely for us. And of course, later on in the particular series, we're going to kind of see how those values will dynamically update using a slightly more advanced technique, although pretty straightforward in this particular series. Okay, so let's fire up the application, and we're going to need to solve a problem because when I created my database, there's some default values that I did not set with inside my database. And I'll demonstrate that to you now. So if I move over to the simulator, you can see that I'm seeing this big, horrible red kind of box is telling me that there's null is not a subtype type int. So it looks like I have some integer values within inside my database that is a null. There's no value. We need to solve that particular problem. So how do we do that? Well, let's move over to the DB browser for SQLite. This is what we used previously. Let's open up our database. Go to open database. Now this is my goals one here, which is on my desktop. Here it is. I'm going to have a look at my goals table here, and you can see that I've kind of got some default value set for the number of tasks. You can see it's 0. So when the record gets created, there'll be a default value of 0. But you can see that I've not done the same for the number of tasks completed, and I need to resolve that. I could do the same thing for archived as well. So whenever we create a new record, we're going to want to have our archived to have a default value of 0. We're going to set 1, of course, when it is archived. We'll come back and do that later. I can also do the same thing as well in our task table. You can see that perhaps there's some default values that can be set here. So which is just this complete one here. So by default, it should be 0. To indicate that it's not complete, we're going to mark it as 1 to represent that it is complete. So let's now get all of that resolved. So how do we do that? Well, we can move over to the goals kind of a table here. We can say modify table. We can move down here. Let's set the number of tasks completed to be a 0. We're going to do the same thing for archived as well, like that. That's all good. Let's move and say OK to that. Let's move over to then the task. Go to modify table here, and we can do the same thing here as well. So if we're complete, we're just going to set this then to a 0 like that. That's all that we need to do. Just hit enter. That is all set. You can see here, this is the script that's going to be run when we hit OK. So that is all done. So that is all super good. We can just close that database now. We can now move back over to Flutterflow. We can re-upload that particular database. So move over to the cog here. You're into the SQLite section where it says My Goals. Just hit the upload option here, choose the database that you've just modified, just say choose. Now in a moment that will go red, and then it will then upload. You'll see that displayed there, and that is good. That is everything corrected from the database. But the problem is we're not done yet. There's a little bit of work that we need to do. If I move back over to the simulator, let me just swipe up from the bottom here. If I could just do that, there it is. Let's just click away here. I'm going to now need to delete my application because, of course, we've just changed the database. So just as a true iPhone is, I'm just going to hold down here, choose the minus. Let's just delete the application completely. So it's gone. There it goes. Now, if I just head back over to Flutterflow, we can move back over to the widget tree. And of course, now we are going to just quite simply just hit the test option. Now that is going to kind of repackage the project up for us with our updated database, redeploy the application, and we should be in a nice new fresh state. Now we're gonna have to create that record again, but then the default values will then form part of that row that we would have created with inside our database. So I'm just going to leave that to play out, and then we'll head back over to the simulator and give it a test. Okay, so back within the simulator, a freshly deployed version of our application with our updated database. Let's hit the plus here. We can create a new goal here, test goal 1. Let's just put a load of gibberish in there, hit create, and there it is, all successfully displayed. Our number of tasks and number of completed tasks. So that's all looking good. That sets us up quite nicely then for the next episode, where we're going to then look at the little percentage indicator here. So we're going to use a code expression. So if you've not used code expressions before in Flutterflow, we're going to use a code expression to work all of that out for us. And we're also going to look then at modifying this to then display the date from that integer value. So that's all up next. That's in the next episode. So if you're enjoying this series, please hit the like button. Of course, if you're not a subscriber of the YouTube channel, then please do hit the subscribe button. And of course, if you want to become a member of the Nocode Academy, the link is right there, or it's in the description as well. So until the next episode, I'll see you soon.